Mr. Mayor, we're now live.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Due to the COVID-19 emergency declaration, this meeting of Ajax Council is being held electronically and live streamed on the town's website. All members of council in attendance are participating by audio and video teleconference, and senior town staff are available throughout the meeting if council members have any questions on the agenda. For members of the public watching from home, please bear with us if we encounter any technical difficulties throughout the meeting. And I now call this meeting to order. I'd like to begin this meeting by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is situated within the traditional and treaty territories of the Mississaugas, more specifically the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation, signatories of the Gunshot Treaty of 1788 and the Williams Treaties of 1923. This land is and will continue to be home to the Indigenous peoples. Let us acknowledge the mistakes and traumas of the past through authenticity and support truth and reconciliation. Let us engage and celebrate Indigenous communities by being leaders of action in acknowledging the United Nations Declaration of Rights of Indigenous Peoples and the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's recommendations towards truth and reconciliation. Let us keep these principles close as we continue towards truth and reconciliation and as we move forward with kindness and respect as a community. Does any member of council have a declaration of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, moving on to the minutes. We have moved by Councillor Bauer, second by Councillor Crawford, that the minutes of the regular meeting of council held on February 22nd be adopted. Any questions or comments on the minutes? Hearing and seeing none, those in favor, please raise your hands. I see 5, that's enough, that's carried. Moving on to item question period. Mr. Clerk, have any members of the public requested to ask any questions under question period?
Mr. Mayor, we have not received any questions for question period tonight.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to delegations and presentations. We have our first presentation, item 5.1, Ajax Anti-Black Racism Task Force update. We have Mariska Thomas, who is the chair, and Dane Lawrence, the vice chair of the task force. Mariska and Dane, whenever you're ready, please go ahead.
Mayor Collier, councillors, members of the senior management team, members of the audience, good evening. It is an honor to represent the Ajax Anti-Black Racism Task Force, also known as the AABR Task Force, as the chair. And Dane Lawrence, vice chair, will also be presenting this evening. As indicated in the June 29, 2020 motion, the Tongue of Ajax listens to the voices in the community and is committed to take action on systemic and institutional racism to combat barriers felt by Black people and other racialized groups. The Tongue of Ajax can be a leader in providing opportunities to the Black community and other racialized groups, enabling them to reach their full potential and contributing to the long-term well-being of individuals, families, and communities in Ajax. This evening, the presentation will focus on 4 goals. These goals are currently being worked on in consultation with the Tongue of Ajax. Next slide, please. Goal 1, to encourage the Tongue of Ajax council, staff, management, and community to learn, acknowledge, and participate in the United Nations International Decade for People of African Descent. The members who worked on this goal are Sonia Ellis-Seguin, Nikidia Thompson, and Danielle James. Action for Goal 1. As the UN Declaration of the Decade of People of African Descent has been recognized nationally, we encourage the Tongue of Ajax to acknowledge the decade and understand its relation to the work of the AABR Task Force and share with the community. Next slide, please. What is the UN Declaration of the Decade of People of African Descent? Around 200 million people who identify themselves as people of African descent live in the Americas. Many millions more live in other parts of the world outside of the African continent. In proclaiming this International Year, the international community is recognizing that people of African descent represent a distinct group whose human rights must be promoted and protected. There are three main pillars: recognition, justice, and development. These pillars were established for promotion and protection of the human rights of people of African descent. These pillars provided the foundation for short and long-term initiatives set out by the AABR Task Force and will be used as a roadmap towards achieving equity for the Black community within the town of Ajax, TOA. Next slide, please. The recommendations to the town of Ajax. 1, the town of Ajax acknowledges the UN International Decade for People of African Descent. The decade and the pillars are the foundation from which the AABR Task Force intends to anchor their goals. Therefore, acknowledging the decade also assists TOA with a more fulsome understanding of the goals of the task force. 2, the town of Ajax and AABR Task Force collaboratively develop a communication strategy that highlights the support of the UN Declaration and connects the goals and initiatives of the task force for presentation to the residents of Ajax, staff, and stakeholders. The communication format should include website, social media recognition, community newspaper, and letters of endorsement to all stakeholders. And 3, that a resource document is created for distribution at Town of Ajax facilities, outlining the International Decade for People of African Descent and the relationship to the AABR Task Force initiatives. Next slide, please. I would like to present the next goal by sharing the following quote with you. Learning is a process whereby knowledge is created through transformation of experience, by American theorist David A. Cole. The goal is to engage Ajax business leaders to review their policies and practices to reduce barriers in hiring, internal promotion practices, leadership development, workplace skill training, and connecting to the UN Declaration pillars of justice and development. The action recommended is that the town of Ajax implement paid internship programs for Ajax residents from the Black community and other racialized groups. The members working on this goal are Kira Van Dusen, Pauline Vassell, Kevin Veneer, Monica Edwards, and I. We are also recommending that a higher percentage of the internships are allotted to the Black community, and here are some of the reasons. Systemic racism is disproportionately higher for the Black community and puts them at a greater disadvantage for job opportunities and promotion within the workforce. Statistics show that the unemployment rate for Black women and men was about 1.5 times higher than the rate for women and men in the rest of the population, but even higher for Black males. Statistics Canada 2020. Research data indicates that an internship program for Black students would allow Black people to know that they are valued and welcome at an organization, and will also increase the number of prospective Black employees and diversity within the workplace. Dane will now present on the benefits of the program in the next slide.
Sorry, Dane, you're on mute. apologies. Thanks again, Mariska. Here are some of the benefits of an internship program. I'll start with the benefits to the employer. Employers help produce highly productive and potential future leaders by complementing and enhancing a student's academic study through meaningful work experience. Students are available for specific long-term projects or for a series of short-term projects. The student and the employer both benefit from participation in the internship program. The employer gains an energetic and enthusiastic and creative addition to their staff. As mentioned previously, the town of Ajax would be seen as ambassadors, leaders, champions by providing opportunities for Black and other racialized youth. There are many benefits to the interns. Some are providing students the opportunity to apply the knowledge they've learned in the classroom. Internship experience contributes to marketability, increasing the student's likelihood of receiving future opportunities by developing necessary skills in the professional environment, opportunity to work in different departments for career developments. It also fosters a spirit of mentorship and will encourage the students to be future mentors in the community. Mr. Mayor and councilors and council members, on behalf of the AABR Task Force, for these reasons and many more, we recommend the Diversity and Inclusion Coordinator work with the town to develop paid internship programs for Black and other racialized groups in the town of Ajax. Goal 3. Next slide, please. The next goal is linked to the UN Declaration, Pillar of Development. This group, the group members who worked on this goal are myself, Dane Lawrence, Camille Perry, Kira Van Dusen, Janelle Benjamin, and Talicia Boland. The goals and objectives: collection of Black-owned business for the town of Ajax. Learning from Black-owned businesses that support is needed while working under the effects of anti-Black racism and COVID-19. Work to develop supports and incentives by identifying and partnering with diverse organizations to support Black-owned businesses and other racialized groups. Phase 1, and I believe the next slide, the AABR Task Force to circulate a survey to Black-owned business entitles over a specific period. The development of a Black-owned business directory that will be used as a two-folded process. It will require the consent from the business owner to publish their business on the TOA website to promote these business entities. Sharing of the information with the goal of the required departments with the town of Ajax or other key community partners that may be able to plan programs, support. Example, strategic planning to these business entities. Future integration with the region of Durham for a central repository of Black-owned business directory. Phase 2. Analysis of responses to the survey by the AABR Task Force. This may require follow-up if answers are ambiguous or unclear. All answers to the survey must be kept in a secure format, and the establishment of the appropriate retention schedule for the survey results. Research and investigate the available support that can assist these business entities. That would include identifying key partners who would be able to provide assistance for Black-owned business within the town of Ajax. Black-owned business directory is published on the Town of Ajax website with the understanding on ongoing schedule for continual maintenance. Phase 3, the AABR task force will provide recommendations that the Town of Ajax can remedy to support these Black-owned businesses. The AABR task force recommends that these three-phased approach be implemented when building a Black-owned business directory for the Town of Ajax. Next slide, please. Goal 4. The final goal is connected to the UN Declaration Pillar of Justice. This goal is implementing a speaker series to educate the public on anti-Black systemic and institutional racism using multiple modalities, including a panel discussion. This speaker series will be presented through the Town of Ajax Diversity Exchange Program on the in partnership with the Ajax Anti-Black Racism Task Force. The members who worked on this goal are Keisha Facey, Sonia Ellis-Seguin, Pauline Vassal, Monica Edwards, Janelle Benjamin, and Nikidia Thompson. This speaker series is set to consist of 5 sessions, and the group members are currently collaborating with the D&I coordinator for implementation. Now back to Mariska.
The AABR task force has been diligently collaborating on our work plan and are pleased to see these initiatives on the way. Outside of our work plan, the task force has been involved with other initiatives as well. Next slide, please. Since the official launch of the AABR task force in September 2020, the task force has 1, supported the Body Worn Camera BWC program being recommended for implementation in 2021 by DRPS. 2, delegated at the DRPS board meeting to provide feedback and recommendations on the DRPS action plan for enhancing trust and confidence in policing in Durham region. 3, provided feedback and recommendations to the town on anti-Black racism training for council. 4, provided comments to the D&I coordinator on the Ajax Shining Star Bursary program. And 5, coordinated a successful Black History Month live event discussing why it is important to celebrate Black history. I would now like to end this presentation with a quote from Nelson Mandela. He said, "It is in your hands to create a better world for all who live in it." To the mayor and council, together, we can create a better and stronger Ajax. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Thomas, and Mr. Lawrence, for your presentation. I had to close off my my picture screen, so I didn't see a lot of hands. Did I have any questions from members of council? Okay, I saw Councillor Crawford. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mayor, Your Worship. Through you to either Dane or Mariska. Thank you very much for some tangible ways that the town of Ajax can support the task force for sure. I'm curious in the goals, the people that were part of developing the goals, do they form like a subcommittee? So for instance, the economic development one has a lot of like kind of tasks after the fact, like once your survey is done, gathering the information, then putting the directory together. So is it that each of the people who helped create the goal then become the subcommittee of that particular goal? Either one, doesn't matter who answers.
I'll let Dane answer this one because he's on that group.
Thank you for the question, Councillor. Yeah, it's each of us have a interest in seeing the Black business groups and organizations grow in the town of Ajax, and the committee is a subcommittee, and with knowledge of some of the challenges of the business that are out there. And yes, again, it is a subcommittee, and that's one of the reasons why we've isolated and grouped it in a way that would bring these ideas forward.
So I know that I don't know if you're planning to stay on, because I know we have riveting meetings, so I'm sure you'd want to see the rest of our meeting. Um, but we have our economic development plan coming forward in a couple of presentations, and out of one of those, we have a motion coming forward that is around the economic development roundtable. So I was wondering if there will be any representation from the task force on that particular committee, because I think that would be valuable for like continuity, can, just the valuable information that you can bring to that particular table. Is that something that you might consider?
Yes.
Wasn't fully aware of the agenda, but thank you for the invitation. The one thing I can share with you is that economic development has been in touch with me personally. So I've had interaction with the staff there, and they've in fact put on a seminar for members of the Black community in the past few months as it relates to funding for the community. But again, it would be good to both hear the presentation and also do a follow-up with the parties involved.
Excellent. So from your initiatives, I just wanted to let you know that the body worn camera was included in the regional budget. So that is going forward. That is great news to the community as a whole. And also I wanted to let you know that I did listen to your presentation with at the DRPS. Thought you both did an excellent job. It was well done. And bravo and congratulations on getting the task force name out there. So thank you for the opportunity to speak, Your Worship, and great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other members of council? Councillor Bauer.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Thank you for this presentation, Chair Thomas and Vice Chair Lawrence. It was excellent, and I really commend you and congratulate you. This is a hard-working group. You can tell by the presentation with the dedication and the passion to get some things done and spread some awareness and education to the folks of Ajax and beyond. So thank you so much for that. I did, and I love your goals. I love them. I can't wait to see them succeed. So I just had a quick question on the paid internships. When you were doing your research, did you find that there's any municipalities in our region that offer paid internships like this program that you're proposing?
Well, in the research we did, we couldn't find anything at the moment when we were doing the presentation. I think there's one in Calgary, but in Ontario, no, we didn't find anything at the moment.
Okay, thank you very much. Very interesting. Thanks again for all your hard work.
Thank you. Any other questions from members of council? Okay, not seeing any hands. Thank you very much, Ms. Thomas and Mr. Lawrence, for your presentation, and also it's a pleasure to serve with you on this committee. You really are doing a lot of hard work, and thank you on behalf of myself and council for your contributions. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Colley and Council.
Moving on to our next item, we have, let me go back here. Item 5.2, presentation by PARA Marine Search and Rescue 2021 Community Government on Corporate Awareness. And I believe we have Colin Thompson, Commodore, and Clint Scott, Community Development. Colin and Clint, are you guys ready to go?
It's Colin here. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Go ahead, Colin. You've got 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. It's just myself tonight. So good evening, everyone. My name is Colin Thompson. I'm the unit leader of Commodore for PARA Marine Search and Rescue. I'm here to give you a quick update on some of our activities over the past year. Basically, for those of you who are not familiar with us, we're 50 50 years of service, plus service, started in 1967. A number of different milestones there you can read through at your leisure. However, last year I wanted to point out the fact that we made a name change to the organization to Paramarine Search and Rescue to better reflect the communities that we serve. And I'll touch a little more on that. As well, you can see on the right is a series of photographs of our past vessels and our current vessel. And that's key to the message I want to communicate a little later in the presentation. So in short, we have a plan. We're a group of volunteers, 50 strong, providing search and rescue, marine search and rescue for the western part of Durham region. We have a business plan. These are the 4 pillars, and I'll get into a little details for each one of these. In terms of management transparency and where our organization sits, we did some board changes last year, which I'd like to communicate at this time. Mayor Collier, for one, joined their board. Keenan Waters from Port Whitby Marina also joined our board. And more recently this year, Rhonda Mulcahy, Regional Council for the Town of Whitby, also joined the board. So we're looking forward to working closely with all these individuals. In terms of our STAR readiness, we have a number of we have 50 volunteers, as I mentioned. We train hard. We go through a series of training programs that are sponsored by the Canadian Coast Guard and Transport Canada. But we also work very closely with a number of STAR partners: Durham Police, Toronto Police, the fire services in each of the municipalities, paramedics, as well as the Air Force and the Canadian Coast Guard. So we have a broad series of skill sets and partners as well. This Durham Regional Report, I won't go through it in detail. However, given COVID, our community hours normally takes us above 8,000 hours to the community, but because we couldn't get out to our events, obviously that number is down. But what's of interest is the fact that the number of tasks that we have or missions that we had were up significantly. And in the next slide, you can see the fact 1984 is on the left, 2020 is on the right. And you can see that it's peaked up to 38, numbers we haven't seen since the late 80s. So given COVID, people were staying home, staycations, a lot of people turned to the water for their activities. And we saw a number of different types of taskings related to that. Give you an idea of where these taskings are. This is an image of Lake Ontario. The line to the right is Whitby. The line to the left is the Scarborough Rouge Valley. And you can see basically the Pickering Ajax in between those 2 lines. Of the 38, almost a quarter of them fell into 8 waters off of Ajax. So it gives you sort of a perspective of the number of people going out there this year or last year. So example taskings, I won't go into this in detail, but in short, we have traditional sailors, powerboaters, sailors, kayakers, canoeists, especially off of the Ajax. All types of Canadian Tire blow-up specials, I would call them, going offshore. Some are long taskings, some are short, some are ended with a positive outcome, and some unfortunately ended in a negative outcome. So happy to answer any questions, but in short, we do respond to a number of different and a variety of taskings. Sorry. So as I mentioned, the brand has changed over the years. It's gone through several evolutions. Last year, we changed it to better reflect Whitby, Ajax, and Pickering. And basically, you can see the new colors, the new brands, the municipality names are in the brand, and you'll see that out in the community this year. You'll see it in particular on a new trailer that we're going to be showing once we're permitted to. Basically, you can see the messaging on there. What I really wanted to mention tonight is our long-term strategy is around asset management for our vessel. We need to replace it in the next 5 to 10 years. These are the specifications for it. We'll look at the latest technologies, including electric and hybrid technologies, but we really need to understand where we're going with this. The price tag for a vessel of this purpose is approximately $1 million to $2 million, depending on the capabilities. And the other thing I wanted to highlight is, in particular around Ajax, if you see the map in the lower left-hand corner, the fire department can only get out about 300 to 600 feet. We can only get in because of the depth of water and the rocks in the water to a certain distance. That red area is what I call no boat land. Neither of us can rescue anybody in those areas. So it's something that any new vessel, we want to take into that account, that new nearshore capability. And finally, in terms of our funding, we're funded predominantly by Durham Region. We do get you guys, our town of Ajax also provides financial funding for us as well, which much appreciated. Thank you. The other municipalities also contributed through grant programs. What I wanted to highlight to the right is basically the local economy is all the funds we raise essentially go back into that economy. One of our major vendors has just actually recently located to Ajax. So the idea here is to basically come up with a plan. And I want to say thanks for this town of Ajax for providing assistance from Cassandra Cruciano. She's helped us develop a plan, a fundraising plan, which I've just sent out to my board today to review, and so we can get some further feedback on that. We all also just recently joined the Ajax Pickering Board of Trade, so we're looking to expand our relationships through that mechanism as well. So at this time, I'd just like to say thank you again, and we're looking forward to your continued support. And I'll take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions by members of council? Regional Councillor Dice.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Colin, for your presentation. Just curious about the type of work that you do. Just from what I'm seeing over the recent years, we have a lot of people who are getting into a boat for the first time on Lake Ontario, not fully understanding, you know, how powerful that lake is and how strong the currents are. So I'm wondering if you're seeing that as well, particularly for kayaking and canoeing, those types of crafts.
Yes, the number of small vessel taskings, if you will, has gone up. Small boats like kayakers, canoeists, a lot of new people on the water. People get their PCOCs, their pleasure craft operator cards, as the minimum requirement, but really it's an online course and really don't have no practical experience. Once you get outside of the bays of Pickering and Whitby, the lake can get rough, and we've been called out in late October looking for folks where the seas are quite rough. So a lot of it, as we get back into the community, will be around marine safety, boating safety. That'll be our messaging to help educate those who are not that familiar with it.
So is that something we can share on our website to help inform people about the safety issues on the lake? Because there are more people down there, as you know, with COVID.
Yeah,
And
in fact, definitely, I can work with your team to provide some content in that regard. I also just recently became a kayaker myself, and I see that kayakers are coming out of Ajax Rotary Park at this time of the year, and the water is very cold this time of the year.
Yes,
so we got to, and none of the rescue vessels are currently in the water, so ourselves and Durham Police are not available to assist if they get into trouble.
That's good to know too. Thank you very much, and I think that's something we should perhaps look at. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Crawford?
I have no question, Your Worship. I just wanted to thank the men and women that are involved in this and the service that you give, and that it is a volunteer basis. And I sincerely hope I am never in need of your services. But thank you for the work that you're doing. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. I'll pass that along to the team as well.
I think you speak for all of us on that. Any other questions from members of council? No. Very good. Thank you, Colin, for your presentation. Please pass on our regards to everybody on the force. And I'm glad that Cassandra is working out and we're able to assist you as far as putting together a program for the new vessel fund. So keep in touch. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to our next presentation, item 5.3, the Economic Development Action Plan. We have Lauren Millier from MDB Insights. Lauren? You're muted, Lauren.
I'm just trying to pull the presentation up. Thank you. Well, thank you very much. I very much appreciate being here this evening. Some of you may recall that this work on behalf of the municipality began in 2019, and we concluded our work primarily in February 2020, just as COVID-19 took hold across the province and the country. After a bit of a pause on the part of most municipalities, we revisited this plan with staff and made some adjustments to it to reflect the work that the municipality had undertaken and is undertaking as it relates to COVID-19. Just before we move too far into the presentation, I do want to acknowledge, because it has been a particularly interesting year, the project team that assisted with getting this document over the finish line included Don Terry, who took over, I believe, in May of 2020, as well as the balance of the Town of Ajax Economic Development staff. All had a hand in ensuring that we were as current and relevant in our recommendations as possible. Jeff Romanowski from Planning and Development Services was also an active participant along with our team, as well as representatives from Queen's Executive Decision Center. Many of you would have participated in our focus groups back when we hosted those. And we also had a member from Metro Economics assist with preparing population and employment projections for the town as well. As part of the process, when we undertake this type of work, we try to answer 3 questions on behalf of the municipality. The where are we now? The where do we want to go? I'm just going to put this at full screen, bear with me. Where do we want to go, and how do we get there? And in terms of the where are we now, obviously everyone can appreciate that we would have done a substantial review of available background materials. We look to update the municipality's economic performance, its business performance, as well as all of the relevant market trends that were impacting the growth of the local economy. Where do we want to go is informed by a considerable amount of public and stakeholder input. This was done through interviews. It was done through a community survey as well as a business satisfaction survey and a number of stakeholder workshops. All of this culminating in what we call a SOAR assessment, which is the strengths, opportunities, aspirations, risks, and results. The how do we get there phase now takes into consideration some of the best practices that have been emerging across the country as well as elsewhere. And this in particular was focusing a considerable amount of time and energy around how municipalities were immediately adapting to COVID, and then over the next 6 or 8 months, how they were adjusting accordingly. There's an economic vision reflected in the strategy, as well as a detailed action plan. The report itself has also been presented to your senior management team, and they have also had an opportunity to provide input and some broad direction with regards to the overall shape of the plan as well. One of the things that I do want to point out is just how economic development has evolved and how this has been reflected in the plan today. Traditionally, we would have looked at business retention and expansion, recruiting of new businesses, startups. But what we're increasingly finding is municipalities are doing that, but they're also looking at how they support talent development around retention, development, recruitment of the workers that you need to grow your economy long term. And another very important element I would suggest is the role of the municipality in placemaking and the impact that has in supporting and attracting the type of talent and businesses that you want to be able to have in the community. The plan itself is a 5-year action plan. This differs from the previous strategy, which was 10 years. This time around, there are 4 goals and a series of related objectives that underpin those goals, and then a very detailed action plan associated with each one of the goals and under each of the objectives. I don't propose to go through this in great detail, but suffice to say what we've done is build on an action plan that attempts to position Ajax as a leader in business retention and expansion, It supports innovators in business incubation and workforce development. It also looks at how the municipality can act as a supporter for attractive place development. And it positions the community too as a champion for organizational readiness to support growth and development. And this is as much because of some of the gaps in programming that we've seen because of COVID, but also the opportunities to improve upon some of the infrastructure that the municipality has in place, like its priority path program, Ajax Advantage, et cetera. How do we need to adapt these for the next 5 years and beyond? One of the other important elements too is a recognition that this is not simply an action plan for economic development, but there is significant crossovers, as you can appreciate, in other departments. There are assets we touch upon. There's the implications of technology and how that's being onboarded. Marketing certainly is a role for economic development, but there are also others that are involved in this space as well. And then lastly, the notion of how economic development in conjunction with others can support some of the projects and events that the municipality is involved with and support of. One of the things that, as I said earlier, that we do want to acknowledge is the fact that COVID-19 still casts and will likely continue to cast a very long shadow for municipalities, particularly around their economic development programming. So as part of the action plan that's in front of you this evening, there are a number of particular recommendations that look at how to onboard some of the economic recovery work that the municipality has underway, and how as well we might look to shift some of the thinking and the narrative around these recommendations to ensure that what we're understanding businesses are actually continuing to deal with is being addressed through the action plan itself. So you'll see recommendations about conducting business impact surveys in conjunction with the BRNE. There is recommendations around how to profile and highlight businesses that have adapted and minimized through that adaptation, the impact of COVID-19. And I don't propose to read it all, but I'd also want to highlight too, to ensure that businesses continue to have access to the type of financial support and recovery efforts that not just the federal and provincial governments have underway on their behalf, but what financial institutions are doing, as well as how other agencies and organizations in the municipality continue to support that. With respect to the goal of being an innovator in business startups and workforce development, again, one of the primary issues I think that's every municipality is trying to come to terms with is the challenges with regards to available bandwidth, and what that means, not just in a residential context, but what it means for businesses. And whether you're urban or rural, certainly rural areas are struggling a little bit in a much greater way, but we're also discovering this across our urban areas as well, where we simply don't have the range of bandwidth necessary for businesses to online or operate some of the e-commerce initiatives that we've seen begin to emerge. In terms of being supporters for place development, certainly some of what's been suggested in the plan looks at how the municipality can integrate innovative economic development tools, and whether that is a range of short-term initiatives that the municipality could be supporting, or it could be things like looking at community improvement plans and making a determination around how much more progressive you could be with those tools as a way to support business development and business growth, particularly around some of the issues that we know businesses are struggling with in workforce attraction, attainable and affordable housing, et cetera. The last goal with respect to functioning as champions of organizational readiness to support growth and development. This again is looking at how the organization can onboard innovations implemented during COVID-19 as longer term objectives for the municipality. So some of the tools that have been used to assist business like AJAC Advantage and some of the more competitive elements that have been introduced through the COVID-19 experience, we're suggesting that some of these should be part of the umbrella now in terms of the programming that your economic development team is delivering. I'm going to pause there. I believe my time is up, but if there's any questions, I'm more than happy to address any of them. And I know I have some staff support here as well, if need be.
Thank you, Lauren. Members of council, any questions on the presentation? Councillor Crawford. And then Bauer.
I had a question around when I first came onto council, we received a designation called Competitive Ready. Does that designation stay with us? Do we have to do anything to upgrade that that certificate? At the time, I know it was quite a prestigious and also onerous thing to actually achieve. And I was just wondering does that stay with us, or do we have to do anything to upgrade it?
I think I would defer to staff as to the timing associated with it, but I would certainly think it was something you needed to upgrade or at least recertify on a regular basis.
Mr. Romanowski, are you able to expand on that?
I can't speak exactly to the timing of the certification. I know it's been in place for, I think, about 5 years. We've had it in place, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know the timing of it, but that's definitely something that I can look into with the help of Don Terry and his team and see where we fall with that and whether or not we're due for a recertification on that front.
Great, thanks very much, Jeff.
No problem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, your worship, sir.
I think it was, thanks for bringing that up, Marilyn. I think it's been actually quite a bit longer than that, but I don't know if we've really seen the benefit of getting that. I know we're the only municipality in Canada and one of 5 in North America to actually get that designation, but I don't know that we ever saw anything come out of it. But it was a good exercise to do. Councillor Bauer, I saw your hand next.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ms. Millier, for the presentation and the report. I just had a question. In the report, it mentions that the Economic Development Action Plan recommends that the town of Ajax complete a comprehensive review of the town's 2 BIAs. So I was just wondering if someone could please speak to that, and what does that entail? What does that mean? What does it look like? Please and thank you.
Through the chair to you, I believe that I would defer to Jeff Romanowski on that. There is some research that was reflected in the reporting, but there were some challenges in doing a full-on review of each of the BIAs over the course of the project.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, thank you. I think Don Terry's on. Don can definitely speak to this. I know he's been engaged with the BIAs on a number of fronts, and he might be the one that may be able to most eloquently kind of frame or answer that question with regards to the BIAs. Don, if you're on, if you could jump in here and help answer Councillor Bauer's question.
Mr. Terry, are you here?
I think he's the economic development one there. Yes.
There.
That was a pretty eloquent start, wasn't it? What I can't say today what that review would look like or when we would start it. The call for, or the recommendation for it came from information gathered by Lauren through her research in talking to one-on-one with stakeholders, doing online surveys and focus groups. There has been a lot of shifting across the province in how BIAs go about their business. And I think in the midst of a pandemic, with the research that we found, that it's prudent to just take a look and ensure that our BIAs are providing proper, adequate service for our BIA businesses and for the town itself. And certainly we'll continue to work with the BIAs in collaboration when we do that review.
And also I would add to what Don's already said is any moves we make on that from economic development and planning development department being the overarching department where ECD sits, those moves will be communicated with council as we move through that review process. So it won't carry on any further than it needs to, as it'll go through the appropriate channels through our senior management team and through to council, and obviously keeping the BIAs themselves and how their current structure is, keep them informed as the process unfolds.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. That's it for me, Chair.
I see Councillor Crawford. Does any other member of council have a question before? Councillor Tyler Moore, and I'm sorry, I did have you next, and then Dies, and then Marilyn, I'll put you for a second time.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for this presentation. I'm very happy to see that there could be and should be reviews of BIAs. I think we owe it to the business owners that are there now that participate. Obviously, my perspective is in Pickering Village specifically, whether or not some or maybe even all of it is antiquated, whether or not we need to spruce things up, change things around, and always try and do a better job. So I'm very much in favor of some kind of review, and it'll be interesting to see what comes out of that. My question is this kind of review happening in, there's 450 or whatever municipalities in Ontario, BIAs all across the province. Do you know offhand if this is a thing right now? Because of COVID, I think it's all prompted us to think about things that we've been doing for a long time, and maybe we can do them differently. Do you know, through you, Mr. Mayor, to maybe either Jeff or Director Romanowski or Manager Don Terry, if this is being done in a lot of other BIAs across even in the GTA?
Through the chair, I can speak locally, and then maybe I can ask Lauren to speak about it on a more provincial level. But certainly locally, you may have followed that the downtown Oshawa BIA has folded, and the city is developing a new method for delivering some of the same services. And I think Lauren can jump in now, but I think we're seeing BIAs, evolve across the province.
Just through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor. We have done work in recent years with the City of Toronto, which supports a considerable number of BIAs, both commercial and industrial, oddly enough. One of the things that we have seen through COVID, and I'm not familiar with any that have necessarily folded, but a lot of them have hit the pause button. We've recently done work with Bolton and Town of Caledon, and they have hit the pause button there as well, for the simple reason they're unable to raise resources to do some of the things that they would normally be doing. I think one of the challenges a lot of the BIAs are going to be dealing with out the other side of COVID is the strong movement to an online presence on the part of businesses, retailers, commercial operations. And I think that the nature of the services that BIAs will need to be delivering in the future to make them relevant will need to be revisited on a very significant level. I think every municipality with a BIA that's asking them for financial support will have to go through this exercise.
Just follow. Thank you so much. I'm just reiterating, it's never been more important for us to be sensitive to the expenditures of small businesses and how much they've suffered over the last year and a half. And we're right at the heart of the matter here. So I'm really glad that this is happening, and we're taking a deeper dive, as they say. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Dies, you were next.
Sorry about that. Thank you very much. And thank you for the work you've done on this. There's a lot of information here. And I thought it was really interesting when I read, you spoke to actually the role of placemaking, which I think is very, very important. And to attract obviously residents and also businesses that relocate. That we talked about too in the report, it was how young people today want to, live maybe in an intense, where there's intensification, it's close to public transportation and without a car. And that's a different way of thinking for many people who live in the suburbs because we're so dependent on that. But I have seen that firsthand in some of the community meetings we've had about development of high rises. And it occurred to me it's an extra cost to them. You mentioned that there are other communities that are focusing on walkable, pedestrian first development communities type thing. And I wonder if there's any that are standouts that I can have a look at.
Through the chair to the councillor. Standouts. I think two communities come to mind across the GTA because they are making such an effort to create what I'll call central cores in the absence of one. Historically, the work that Markham has done is probably on a scale that Ajax should consider. There has been considerable effort to intensify around what they've deemed to be their central core area. And again, where there wasn't one before. I would also look on a different scale at the work that the city of Vaughan is doing around the Vaughan Metropolitan Center. And the reason I single out Vaughan is because it has TTC subway stops now. And knowing some of the conversations we've had in Ajax around how to leverage the GO train infrastructure in a more significant way. And certainly the interest on the part of the development community to look at how to intensify around that infrastructure. And probably Burlington is a little bit further behind those two again. Again, trying to leverage the GO train, GO transit infrastructure that's in place and what that will mean in terms of intensification and how to support those walkable environments as they build out. Those would be three that I would certainly have a look at.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And I have another question, I guess, for Mr. Romanowski. We do mention the Pickering Village as being a walkable pedestrian place, but we also have potential there to build on the old part of the village, the old Kingston Road, by intensifying or building on the land that the municipality owns where the ice pad is. And I know we were looking at there. I just wondered how far we are in the process.
Sure. Well, a lot that site where the arena and the community center and the library are, that's going to be really focused on and look through the Parks and Rec master plan. That's been really where the direction's going to come from on what to do with those lands and to get an idea of the development potential or what partnerships could be entered into in order to realize the development of those lands. See a mixed use development probably occurring there over time, something that fits in and really kind of, sets the stage for those types of placemaking spaces within the town. And I think that's an area that through the Parks and Rec master plan, we'll be able to at least have an idea of a vision that's going that way. I know Mr. Meredith's on the call. He could, and Mr. Vita, they're both heavily engaged in the Parks and Rec Master Plan. I'm also part of that, and that's where those discussions have gone so far with
So-
regards to the town property in the village.
Sorry to interrupt.
No problem.
So we did have a plan in place, or we looked at this quite a number of years back. And we know that residential would kickstart any type of new businesses on that sort of streetscape that we're looking for. But we also were looking at community aspect of businesses. We have a very strong strong arts community, and a lot of it was centered in the village, and they really need to be nurtured because there is a part of tourism there as well that I think we're missing, and I think that fits in the village. So I'm hoping that when we look at that land, we're still taking that into consideration. I know we don't need a theater anymore, that's done. But we were looking at teaching spaces and maybe, small businesses in the arts that can still foster that, what's happening in that area now with the artists.
Yeah, through the chair to Regional Councillor Dyes. I mean, all those things that you've said, Councillor Dyes, we've talked about around the screen, I guess, for lack of a better term. Whether it's part of a cultural plan or the Parks and Rec plan, or some type of development that's a mix of uses, whereas community space or maker space, like what Sarah is doing with the library, or is it a mix of residential uses? Is there other community town facilities in there that could be kind of rolled into the mix there too, right? So we have a really good opportunity here with that property. It's a significantly sized parcel. And I think that, as we go through the Parks and Rec Master Plan and do some more visioning on that parcel and the surrounding context, nothing's going to move forward without this council knowing about that. And that's definitely the information that you've provided, Councillor Dyes. We can take that back to the group, and they've heard that this evening. So that'll be top of mind for sure.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. I do think I know tourism was mentioned in the plan also. I was pleased to see that. And I think that's an area that we haven't really strongly focused on and has huge potential. We're going to see that this summer in a big way. So, and that's not a bad thing. It's how you manage it and how you get people, to investigate more of your town or your city. So thank you. I appreciate the information.
No problem.
We just talked about that at the mayor's meeting today, Pickering Village. I have Councillor Crawford for a second time. Any member of council that hasn't spoken yet for the first time? Okay, Councillor Crawford, go ahead.
Thank you for letting me back in. I'm curious, Ms. Miller, through you, your worship, to Ms. Miller, around your comment around Markham being the example of a walkable community. Where exactly would we look for that?
If you look in the area of Markham where their theater is focused and City Hall is located, there is what I'll call a central core area that they've laid out through master planning that is designed to be a walkable area, a residential area, employment area that works in conjunction with City Hall, the theater, as well as some other footprints in proximity to it. So it's leveraging the built environment that's around it as well.
And also the 407, I imagine too, right? Because is that the Highway 7 area?
Oddly enough, the 407 wasn't there when they started. It certainly is now. but yes, the 407 would run just to the south of it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I lived through the whole Vaughan thing, so I understand that part very easily. My other question is to Don Terry around the Economic Development Roundtable. When are we going to see the call to community to start this table getting developed?
Actually, given endorsement of this plan tonight, it should start to get rolled out tomorrow through IMO and social media. We'll be putting out a call for volunteers to set forth their interest and their qualifications for being on that task force or roundtable.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay, any other members of council? I don't have so much questions as just a couple of comments, just going through. I'm glad you identified to our downtown servicing and that has been a major issue. You do point out that office development, one thing that I've heard from developers is that office space is something that they're not real willing to build, but you speak specifically to this lack of commercial office space was cited as a missed opportunity, which I agree, absolutely. And I've been talking about that this whole way through. That's why I'm such a strong proponent of mixed use. But one of the things that this council's recently done is what I think is a fairly bold move, and that's through the Envision Durham exercise, approving, is it five? No, 4 properties in outside of our downtown, because we recognize we have that sewer constraint issue there, but around our other employment park, where we will be able to hopefully have that office space, that live, work, pedestrian friendly, mixed use type in close proximity with a lot of development on the outskirts of a lot of the development. And I think I see that tying in a little bit here, which is good. I think that reinforces our decision a little bit. So I was glad to see that. And if there's no other questions, thank you for the report. Thank you for the presentation. And I wasn't going to bring it forward to be dealt with now. We'll deal with that in just a few minutes. But that ends our delegation. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Let me move on to moving on to correspondence. I have a motion to suspend the rules of procedure to allow an additional piece of correspondence. Mr. Clerk, I believe you have the correspondence from the Ontario Big City Mayors that you could put up. I have moved by Councillor Tyler Moore and second by Councillor Khan that the rules of procedure be suspended in order to add an item of correspondence from Ontario Big City Mayors regarding their March 19th meeting. And this does require 2/3. So can I see hopefully everybody's hands? Those in favor, please. I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There you go, 6. That's carried. Thank you. None opposed. To allow this piece of that's on the screen right now. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. On the items of correspondence, do we have any polls from any members of council? Councillor Crawford? Oh, you're muted.
It's been a year. You'd think by now I could remember this. I don't know. So stupid. I just wanted to recognize the town of Brock and their motion to do the interim cap on the gas plant and the greenhouse gas emissions. I wanted to mention.
Which one is that?
It's number 9.
Number 9. Okay, hold on a minute. Hold on a minute. Are there any other polls other than number 9? Okay, so I moved by Councillor Bauer, second by Councillor Dyes. And I guess I will pull the Big City Mayors one that we just added. We'll call that number, whatever the last one is. So on the balance, moved by Councillor Bauer, second by Councillor Dyes, that the report dated March 22nd, 2021, containing items of correspondence we received for information. So on the balance, those in favor? Any opposed? None. That's carried. Thank you. On item 9, Councillor Crawford.
Yeah, I just wanted to pull it out to recognize the Township of Brock, and the only reason is that this has really picked up quite momentum. I think there's 19, including the City of Toronto now, municipalities that have brought this motion forward. I tried to get the Works Department to endorse it and couldn't get them to endorse it. So I'm very happy to see that the town of Brock actually did that, and that's all I have to say about that. Thank you.
Are you moving that we endorse that, Councillor Crawford?
Yes, sir, I am.
Can I get a seconder, please? Second by Councillor Lee. Those in favor of endorsement? That's carried. Thank you. On the last one, can I get a mover to endorse the Ontario Big City Mayor so I don't have to vacate the chair? Moved by Councillor Bauer, second by Councillor Crawford. Would either one of you like to speak to it before I speak to it quickly? Okay, I'll just speak to it quickly. I asked for this to be added because At the Big City Mayors meeting on Friday, we did discuss this. We've already passed resolutions here at this council opposing the 7-Eleven, which is one of the ones that was the correspondence from Oshawa there, request for liquor license, asking for wholesale liquor sales for bars and restaurants. And these are the businesses that have been hit the hardest. And this also talks about housing initiative funding from the federal government as well. So there was a number of very good recommendations that came out of the Big City Mayors, this resolution, that I thought that we as a council would be good for us to endorse and support, because it does affect all municipalities. Ontario Big City Mayors is a strong voice, but again, Ajax Council is a pretty strong voice too. So I just wanted to bring this forward. Does anybody else have anything to say on that? Hearing, seeing none, it's been moved and seconded for endorsement. Those in favor of endorsement? I see all hands, that's carried. Thank you. Moving on to reports, we have the Community Affairs and Planning Committee report, moved by Councillor Lee, second by Councillor Khan, that the Community Affairs and Planning Committee report dated March 1st be adopted. Any questions, comments on the CAP report? That was the case study for our downtown last week. Hearing, seeing none, those in favor of receipt or approval? Any opposed? Nope, that's carried. General Government Committee, moving on to GDC, moved by Councillor Bauer, second by Councillor Tyler Morin, that the General Government Committee report dated March 8th be adopted. Questions or comments on the GDC report? Okay, hearing and seeing none. Those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, that's carried. Summary of Advisory Committee activities, moved by Councillor Crawford, second by Councillor Khan, that the Summary of Advisory Committee activities report dated March 22nd, 2021, as attached to the meeting agenda be received for information and the recommendations contained therein be referred to staff where applicable. Any questions or comments on the Advisory Committee reports? All right, hearing none, those in favor of receipt? I see all hands, that's carried. Moving on to departmental reports, 7.4.1, the Economic Development Action Plan that we just had a presentation on, moved by Councillor Tyler Moore and second by Councillor Khan, that the Town of Ajax 5-year 2021 to 2025 Economic Development Action Plan be endorsed. Any further questions or comments on the Economic Development Action Plan? Hearing, seeing none, those in favor of endorsement? I see all hands, that's carried, thank you. Regional Council reports. Any regional council reports? Councillor Crawford.
I just have a quick update from Vision Zero. So around APS, which are the audible sounds at the lights. In the 2021 year, Ajax will be receiving 2, 4, 6, 7 of these in our intersections: Harwood and Emperor Street, Harwood and Clements, Farrell and Doughty, Audley and Williamson, Westney and Taunton, Westney and Williamson, and Westney and Atherton / Curtis. So each of those intersections are going to have audible push when they go for the light to change as part of the AODA. And according to the traffic department at the region, this is going to be something that will be pushed through many of our intersections through the AODA for safety, not only for people with disability and hearing, but also for seniors, also to help with safe crossing at our intersections. So just wanted to give you a quick update on that. Of course, our red light cameras and our automated speed enforcement are continuing with great success, much to the not happiness of our residents, but they have been extremely successful. And definitely they are going to be having, I think, 4 new permanent automated speed enforcements that were approved in the budget, which is good news for slowing people down and that was my update from Vision Zero. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other regional council updates? Okay, not seeing any hands. I will just talk quickly about our new vaccine clinic here in Ajax, which is done with the Region of Durham Health Department. We've all, I think many of us have had an opportunity to tour the Audley Rec Center banquet hall and see the good work that they've done in there. Everything is all set. The facility will open on March the 24th. It's going to be running from 10:30 a.m. till 8 o'clock p.m. every day, 7 days a week, weekends, stat holidays, doesn't matter, from now until I think an unspecified ending date. They are set up to do about 1,500 vaccines a day, but because of limitations, they're going to be booking about 700 vaccines per day. And the online booking opened today. So if you're 75 years or older, you can go online to durham.ca/vaccine appointment and book your appointment today. You can book 7 days. They're booking 7 days in advance. So you can book 7 days in advance. And we just found out, it was pointed out by Councillor Lee, that the nearest bus stop was quite a distance away. So I reached out to DRT, and just let me pull up this from Durham Regional Transit. We had good news today. So as a follow-up to the COVID vaccination clinic at the Audley Rec Center and my email, Durham Regional Transit on-demand service will be available from any DRT bus stop in Ajax. Will take you directly to the Audley Rec Center for any resident in Ajax during clinic hours. So from 10:30 a.m. to 8 o'clock p.m. Customers will be able to use the app. There is a DRT app available at the Durham Regional Transit website, or they can call and speak directly with a booking agent at 1-866-247-0055, and regular transit fares will apply. So that should really help out those with mobility issues and need to get there or can't get a ride. Just one notice, you will, since it is a bus, you will probably have others on the bus, but distancing and all that will be done. And the other thing was, at the finance meeting, we did approve, at the last regional council meeting, we did approve the 1.98% tax increase at the region. And I don't remember how much that is for the average household, but that was approved, and that was the main item of our last regional council meeting. And any questions on regional council reports? Councillor Lee.
Could you just repeat that phone number one more time? We have our board meeting tomorrow at Bears.
Yeah, I actually can send this out to you as well. I've given this information to staff and asked them to put it out on all of our social media channels. So that should be going out publicly, but it's 1-866-247-0055. And it's durham.ca/vaccine appointment to book.
And just again, thanks for looking into that. You know, I know it's only 600 meters from the nearest stop, but especially if it's 75 and up, that's quite. I'm 39. That's a long trek for me. So we really appreciate that.
Well, actually, the nearest stop is right there at Williamson and Audley, but because of COVID and because of reduction in services and on-demand service, that route is not running right now. But yeah, good call, because that's not something that I had thought of. So we got on it right away, and I'm glad that we were able to make the changes and get that done. If there's no other questions, I just have a question for Councillor Crawford, and it's to do with the automatic speed enforcement. And I'm very excited that it's going well, and I can't wait to bring it here at Ajax. But what I would like to know is, when is the region going to share their data with us? Because, you know, they've been operating for a year. They've been very successful and have expanded their service. But the City of Toronto, the Region of Durham, nobody seems to want to share their data with us, and we need that data for our program.
So, okay, so that's not a problem. They're not keeping a secret, so it's not secret information. But I will say that I've mentioned to Steve numerous times that with our police chief coming to Durham Region, our regional meetings, there seems to be some confusion as to who's responsible for the automated speed enforcements. Most councillors believe that that is the police, and it's not. It's Durham Region, which is odd because we actually endorsed it. But
Right.
anyway, so they are going to be making more presentations to council, whether through updates in the works minutes or actually sound bites that will just be coming to Durham, the Durham Regional Council. So again, I can certainly try to get that data from you 100%. Are you looking just for Ajax data?
No, actually, we've been part of the projections that we've been given on our reports in Ajax have used projected estimated costs.
Oh,
As well as the number of tickets. And you know, I would like to know what the actuals are. And I think after a year-long pilot and the fact that they've been very successful and are expanding, they should be able to tell us how, you know, why they're basing that, like why they're making that decision, and what the actual costs are, because we're estimating court costs being very high. Are they? I don't know.
So, well, that's hard to tell because during COVID, a lot of the courts were closed, right? So they're estimated because situations changed. The reporting station closed down during COVID in the first wave. The court system closed down. There's many things that actually factored into not having accurate data. If you're talking about, so data, I think how many tickets have been given out. You're thinking you want not data, but costs. Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah,
Or
they're saying that it doesn't generate revenue, which I understand that it's a break-even proposal, but we would like to be able to hammer down those costs and those actual numbers for
Okay.
operating and everything else, so we can make a better informed decision.
Okay, fair enough. That's I can work on that for you. Thanks.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Any other questions on regional council reports? Fair enough. I have moved by Councillor Lee, second by Councillor Crawford, that the regional council reports of March 22nd, 2021 be received for information. Those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. That's carried. Moving on to business arising from notice of motion, and we have a number of motions here. We have 5. I'll turn over the chair to Councillor Dyes at this point for the next 2 motions as I'm part of them. So the first is a land bank levy, moved by myself, seconded by Regional Councillor Lee. I won't read the entire thing because they are all printed in the report, but just therefore now be it resolved that staff be directed to investigate a land banking levy and report back financial, legal, and strategic implications of a land banking levy program and recommendations for consideration prior to the 2022 budget process. And I'll just speak to it quickly, so I got tongue-tied there. We've been working very hard to move our vacant lands, get them, open it up, get shovels in the ground. At the same time, real estate prices have been skyrocketing. So resident or business landowners that own property can sit on that property and it appreciates in value. However, we're not able to collect the tax revenue on those lands. And I don't mind if people want to sit back and have their property appreciate. Nothing wrong with that. However, since this council took the initiative back in 2007 to pre-service a lot of our employment lands at taxpayer expense, it would be nice if we could recoup our costs and get those monies back and get these moving and get these jobs created. We've been very successful so far, but there's still a number of vacant parcels that could potentially sit for an indefinite amount of time, which is their right. However, I think it's incumbent on us to be responsible to recoup the tax dollars, and part of that would be potentially through a land banking levy, based on those that if they want to sit in land bank, no problem, but you're still going to be paying the taxes on that property. So this is just directing staff to look into this and report back to council at a later date before the next budget process. And I would ask for your support. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, Regional Councillor Lee.
Just echoing the mayor's comments, we went through this whole process of, mapping out our land for the next you know, in a sense, 30 years. And I just, we're excited about, I mean, I think I fairly speak for all of council. We're excited about the growth potential in Ajax, but not if a developer is just going to sit on land until it's convenient for them. So this is just a way, again, I'd much rather work with developers to actually use this land and use it for employment reasons or whatever the end result may be. But if they insist on sitting on it, then this is just a very small price to pay. But I think hopefully this will encourage developers to kind of re-examine their priorities and re-examine how they can fit within Ajax. We have a planning and ECD department who's chomping at the bit to work with them. So hopefully this sends a really positive message to those developers. Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments on the motion? And I can't see everybody, so if you have a question, just yell at me. Okay. All in favor then?
In favor.
Any opposed? Okay,
Hey.
that's carried. Thank you.
Thank
So
you, everybody. The next is to do with the Hunt Street to Westney Road extension, and we've spoken to this extensively. Okay, I'll just read the therefore first. Therefore be it resolved that economic development staff in consultation with transportation planning and finance be directed to report back to the May 2021 General Government Committee meeting with a report assessing the scope of property acquisitions required to facilitate the extension of Hunt Street to Westney Road, including the acquisition of 285 to 289 Hunt Street and 232 and 234 Mackenzie Avenue, which are currently on the market for sale. And that's moved by myself, second by Councillor Bauer. And I'll just speak to it quickly and then turn it over to Councillor Bauer. This property is on the market. We just had our economic development report ahead of us. We've heard ad nauseum for the last several years about our sewage capacity restrictions holding up our downtown. And we had a report through the case study last week that we just approved today, which spoke about a few different solutions, but the number one solution is the Hunt Street connection to Westney. As I said, this property, or a majority of the property required, is on the market right now. There's a number of things that could happen. We could sit back and wait and do nothing and just hope, and maybe somebody will buy it. And if somebody buys it, maybe they will develop it sooner rather than later, and maybe we'll be able to get the land we need to extend Hunt Street in the sewer capacity and solve our problem. But that's a maybe. Or maybe we could work with a partner, another developer, maybe have a private-public partnership where a large developer buys the land and we work with them to master plan, and we get the portion that we need to do the road, and the property gets developed and we have our sewer connection and we free up our restrictions in downtown. Or perhaps the town of Ajax buys the land and maybe we debenture it, maybe we buy it, maybe we debenture it, maybe we master plan it, maybe we put the road through. And then once we've got that in place, maybe we sell it off to another developer and they develop it and put in the, I don't know. But all this is asking is for staff to look at a few of the different scenarios, because if it's up to me, I don't want to sit and wait for potentially 10 years, for instance, for somebody to come along and develop this and we can move it forward. It's on the market today. I would just like to have staff look into this and get back to us in May with the numbers so we can, again, look at the different scenarios. And I can tell you, I have spoken to a couple of potential partners, and there is interest in working with us. But I think we need to do this groundwork first and see exactly what is required before we do that. So that's what this is asking. And once again, I'd like to ask for your support. Thank you, Chair.
Are there any questions?
I'll just make a comment, Chair Dice, please, if you don't mind. Happy to second this motion. Thank you, Mayor Collier. You know, this is the sewage capacity, the issues. It's a long-standing identified issue that you know, we really need to fix. And it in this area, you know, it stands between the downtown that we have and the vision of what it could become. So I'm very happy to second this motion. Thank you.
Madam Chair, it's Marilyn. I'm not sure if you can
Yeah,
see
I
me.
can see it. Thank you, Marilyn. Go ahead.
Through you, Madam Chair, to Mayor Collier. So are you asking for staff to come up with a cost of the sewer upgrade?
No, what I'm asking staff to do is to come up with some different scenarios on how we can acquire the land. I think we already, I know the Region of Durham last year, Works Department did approve, did recognize the Hunt Street extension was a high priority and did approve the funding for it in 2021. If you recall, I moved a motion trying to get it moved to 2020, which was unsuccessful. But I think that is it $6 or $8 million they have allocated in their budget. But if we don't have the land, if we don't have the land and we don't have partners to move forward, the region's money isn't really going to help us. And if we don't have the $18 million to put the road through, again, it's not going to move forward. So what I'm asking staff to do is look at different ways that the land could be acquired.
Okay.
Whether a partner buys it and we work with them, whether we buy it and then we sell off what we need later, and what that would cost us to finance, or I don't know. I'm just sort of spitballing a couple of things here off the top of my head, but that's what it's asking, is for staff to look at how these lands can be acquired, what it would cost, and the different ways that we could finance it to help accelerate this project.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other questions, any other comments? I just have one, and I guess you might want to refer it to staff. I'm a little bit, I don't know what the time frame is here. You've got a property that's for sale and it's time sensitive. So will we have enough time to go through this and look at all the different options? I don't know how quickly land like that sells, if it's not a problem. Just curious.
Is that to me?
Well, to you or to Mr. Romanowski, they're going to be the ones I would think are looking into this.
In finance, yeah.
Yeah, to the chair who's asking the question, as the mayor's put this motion forward. So Councillor Dies, your question was, is this enough time, and you also asked about the property itself. So maybe just clarify your two questions for me.
Well, obviously, if you have a property for sale, it might be time sensitive. It could sell in a week. I don't know how quickly properties sell. Do we have enough time to look at the different options to purchase or partner?
We do have time. The property's been on the market for a while now. I think it's been on the market since either late last year or early this year. So it's been on the market for a bit. We've been in discussions with several, I guess, tire kickers, people looking at purchasing the property that came to us through CBRE, who's the listing agent of the lands. But no for real purchasers at this point, at least based on our conversations that we've had with some of the prospective purchasers. So that's kind of the lay of the land with regards to kind of the real estate, and it's been around for a while. Like I said, it's been on the market for a bit, but no real action on it as of yet. And your second question?
No, that's good. That helps. Thank you. Just
Okay.
gives me an idea of moving forward. Thank you.
No problem.
If there are no other questions or comments, I'll call the vote then. All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much. Back to you, Mr. Mayor, I think, is it?
Actually, point of order, would it be appropriate to move up 9.5 so that we just finish all the mayor's motions?
I think Councillor Lee, since we're both on this next one, I agree, moving up 9.5 next would probably be appropriate, and then we just go to the Dyes Bauer motion at the end, if that's okay, Councillor Dyes?
That's fine with me.
Okay, we don't need a motion for that. So Councillor Lee, you are next.
Very good. Thank you, Chair. This stemmed from some of the conversations we were having with our diversity and inclusion coordinator, as well as conversations we've had at the region, and just an ongoing conversation regarding equality and best practices and what we can do as a municipality to ensure that we are practicing what we're preaching. We just had a very in-depth conversation regarding with the Anti-Black Racism Task Force regarding some of the steps they hope we can take. And I thought this was a very easy one we could take. So this motion in a sense asks that our HR present to council by May just some of the modern process improvements and upcoming initiatives they have in terms of ensuring that we become we maintain to be an equal opportunist employer. And so that's what this motion is. I would appreciate all of council's support on this. Thank you.
Mayor Collier, do you have any comments?
I'm just very quickly, I'm happy to second. I mean, it was obviously, I think this is a no-brainer. This is one of the areas we need to be looking at. I have been criticized at some of my open houses about why, people will say, when I walk in a town hall, some of the staff doesn't represent me. And I don't think that's an issue with our hiring practices so much as just people tend to come and stay at the town since it's a great place to work and be here a long time. And it's going to take some time through attrition to change that. But I think we do have to have a look now, since we are looking at systemic racism across the board and identifying. I think we have to at least look at our hiring practices, whether it's doing things like blind resumes or, very diverse panels for the interviews or those type of things, and make sure that we have those policies, procedures in place so that we can make sure that we're sort of taking that off the table and that we're doing things properly. So I look forward to this report coming back, and I'm really happy to second. Thank you.
Any questions or comments from council? Yeah. All in favor then of the motion? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you.
And just the last one, Madam Chair, thank you. Moved by myself, second by Regional Councillor Crawford. And again, I'll just read the therefore. The Ajax Council believes the province should maintain its commitment to land use planning for the long-term benefit of Ontario by upholding its own policies and priorities in all land use decisions, and that all land use planning decisions, provincial and municipal, should remain consistent with the provincial policy statement. And council strongly urges the province to repeal Schedule 3 of Bill 257, which is the Supporting Broadband and Infrastructure Expansion Act in 2021. And again, I'll just speak quickly. This motion obviously was written before the events that happened a week and a half ago. A lot has happened since 2 Fridays ago, when the provincially significant wetland in Pickering was taken off the table, thankfully. However, as long as Section 3 is still in Bill 257, the option for the province to be able to bypass the provincial policy statement, which is basically the law that stops this type of thing, the door is still left open. So I think it's important that we still send this message, even though the immediate threat in our backyard or our side yard, I'll say, is no longer an issue. I'll have to close my door, sorry. Is no longer an issue right now. I think it still is incumbent on us to make sure that we send that message to the province that we want that taken off the table. And that's what this does. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is there any other, I'm sorry, do you want to speak to that? I can't, I've got the wrong screen. Councillor Lee, was that? Do you want to?
Crawford.
Sorry, Councillor Crawford.
Yeah, I just want to say I can't tell you how happy I am to support this and second this motion. I have learned so much about different levels of government in the last 2 years that it leaves me screaming into my pillow. The fact that that they sneak things into legislations that has nothing to do with what they're doing, it it drives me nuts. So I cannot be happier to support this motion. Thank you very much for including me in it.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Well, I have to say I do appreciate it as well. It's been a whirlwind of activity thanks to the changes, proposed changes the province has made, taking away Conservation Authority, their authority to protect lands to some degree, and now changes to the PPS and Planning Act. So it's pretty devastating that they can hammer their way through this, which is actually going to hammer their way through the our environmentally sensitive lands that we want to protect for obvious reasons. So thank you for bringing it forward. And if there are no other questions, I'll call the vote on the motion. All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you.
I'll return
Back to you now, Mayor Collier.
Thank you. And I just want to say on behalf of Councillor Dyes, thank you for all your hard work that you've been as our board, as our director on the TRCA. I understand I'm sure it hasn't been easy at all dealing with this all the way through. And like I've said a few times, I'm all for a fair fight, but when they keep changing the rules, it makes it pretty difficult. So thank you for sticking in there on this, and Councillor Lee as well with CLOCA, Central Lake Ontario Conservation Authority. It's difficult for the conservation authorities when they take away your authority and your power to do your job. So moving on to growing the Greenbelt, we have Councillor Dyes, over to you for your motion.
Well, thank you. Thank you. So I guess it's the next piece of the saga of what's happening at the province. So on February the 17th, the province announced a 60-day consultation period because they're looking at growing the Greenbelt, which is a great thing. This includes, the Greenbelt, we all know the importance of it. It does include the farmland, forest, wetlands, and watersheds. But it specifically refers to the priority of ideas for adding and expanding and further protecting urban river valleys. It was implemented, the Greenbelt, in 2005 to specifically protect watersheds and agricultural lands. And the headwaters of our Carruthers Creek is in the White Belt, completely surrounded by Greenbelt. So White Belt is land that has been set aside for future development until 2051 when they reevaluate it. But it never made sense to us here in Ajax that it was completely surrounded by Greenbelt when it is in fact the headwaters of a watershed. So here we have an opportunity once again to make comments to the province of how the town of Ajax would like this protected in the Greenbelt. It's critical. The TRCA, or Toronto Region Conservation Authority, recently completed their Carruthers Creek Watershed Report. And, developing the headwaters of the Carruthers would have a serious risk on people and their properties and the infrastructure surrounding that. It would increase the risk through flooding by 77%. That's a huge amount. And when that happens, when you start to develop also on these lands, because you're going through rural Greenbelt lands, you also have to put infrastructure in, like water, sewage, wastewater management, all that kind, or stormwater management, those kinds of things that cost money. It's huge infrastructure, but the burden of that infrastructure to maintain and replace and look after it is placed on the taxpayers here in Ajax. So these are some of the issues that you're facing when you start to build on these watersheds. And I always look at a report we did have at TRCA. We looked at a watershed in the West End that over decades had been developed, because it only takes one to start it off, and then it goes all the way down. And at the end of the day, they're looking at huge flooding remediation, because so much runoff and the changes we're experiencing in climate with heavy storms, and we're having snow melts earlier all at once. So there's they had to look at a special policy flood area for this. And when they looked at it, and I sort of read the report and went through and took costed all the different initiatives that it would take, a few bridge replacements, a dredging here, widening here, protecting the curve. It was a whopping $57 million to mitigate and fix some of these problems that are happening on this watershed. And it's something we don't want to see here on the Carruthers watershed, because again, that falls on the taxpayers to pay for. There's a reason why these lands are protected. So that's all I wanted to say, basically, that we have an opportunity here. And this motion basically is requesting that, you know, they explore options for the green belt, that they do include the Carruthers headwaters, and that our staff prepare some comments for the environmental registry. We have until, I think it is April the 19th, in which to respond on the registry. And I would encourage other residents to do so as well, and make sure that the information is on the website for you. I know that our residents were extremely involved in 2018 when they did the review on the green belt, and have been for years. We've done a lot of work in that area. So I really encourage you to you know, look on the Ontario Registry website and make some and put forward your comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bauer, do you want to speak as a seconder?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, please. Just very quickly. Thank you to Councillor Dyes. I echo all of her comments, and she's very passionate about this, and I'm happy to second her motion. You know, we all know how vital and important green space is, green belt is, white belt, and how important it is for us to really find that balance between good planning and protecting our planet, protecting our environment. So, and we need to rely on, as it says in the motion, science-informed decisions and real expert advice. So I'm pleased to put forth this motion with Councillor Dyes to second it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other members of council wish to speak or ask questions on this motion? I'll just point out quickly, we're all aware of the letter I got from Minister Clark about 11, 12 days ago regarding our Annandale site and the Urban River Valley lands. And we had, when they had first reached out for this Greenbelt consultation, we had specifically asked them, and I think I'd sent a letter specifically asking, or I think that the CAO did actually, were our Annandale lands included in the Urban River Valley? Because our staff had told us the developable portion, the prestige employment designated portion in the official plan was not, was well outside, but of course the creek and that small wetland area were. And so I had to be very careful the way we answered that letter, because the letter asked if Ajax wanted the lands taken out of consideration. First of all, the lands weren't in consideration. The upper developable area was outside of the Urban River Valley. And I want to make that very clear. But the remainder of the land, 60+% of the entire property, absolutely, I think we should be looking at and making recommendations that be considered as part of this Greenbelt initiative. So I did say that in the letter, and I tried to make it very clear that absolutely we do not want the developable portion in, because it's not in anyway, but the piece that is in, we absolutely support being considered. So I think that message was sent loud and clear. I haven't heard a response yet, but I do think it is important for our staff to send our comments as well with regards to this in this process. So I'll be supporting the resolution. Anything else by any members of council? Hearing, seeing none. Those in favor of the motion? I see all hands, including me. That carries. And that finishes our motions. Moving on to confirming bylaw. Oops, sorry, hold on. Moving on to bylaws, there are none. Any notices of motion? Councillor Lee, I believe you had one, and Councillor Tyler Moore.
Announcements. Oh, no, sorry.
Okay, sorry, Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair.
Notice of motion.
I'm just serving notice of motion for the April meeting that Councillor Dyes and I will just be putting forward the motion regarding setting emissions targets for the town of Ajax. So we had achieved the 2021s, but we have nothing going forward into the future. So they're very much in line with the regions that finance had passed, I think a few weeks ago. But I just wanted to make sure we have something that this municipality can put in writing and strive towards. There'll be community targets as well as corporation targets. So looking forward to bringing that right around Earth Day.
Perfect. Any other notices of motion? Okay, new business and announcements. Councillor Tyler Moore.
Thank you.
There you go.
There you go. I'm in play. Regional Councillor Marilyn Crawford and I are hosting our own Ward 1 community meeting next Monday, March 29th at 7 p.m. You'll see some social media announcements going out. We always love seeing new faces, and the ones that join us often, they're always fun conversations, and we get a lot of information out. It's a good time for residents to come on and ask us questions. And if we don't have the questions on the spot, we get back to you real quick with staff answers. So that is Monday, March 29th at 7 p.m. and it will be a Zoom meeting. We'll send you links, send us your emails if you want to be part of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Khan.
Thank you, Your Worship. Ward 2, in a matter of exactly 22 hours. You can't miss this. It's our Ward 2 meeting. Meet me, Ashmead Cannon, Sterling Lee, Town of Ajax Ward 2 Regional Councillor, and discuss Ward 2 community issues at our upcoming virtual ward meeting tomorrow, March 23rd at 7 p.m. online via Zoom, and registration is required. It's the big show, guys. Don't miss it. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Chair. That's hard to follow, Councillor Khan. Just an invitation to all residents on Tuesday, March 30th, so next Tuesday from 7 to 9 p.m. There is a public open house for the zoning bylaw amendment regarding the property at Shoal Point and Bailey Streets. So it is, I believe registration is also required for that. Next Tuesday night, public open house starting at 7. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lee.
Thank you. I'm not sure this is the place or the time, but I'm just going to do it anyways. I just want to give a shout out to MPP Jennifer French. So we had talked a lot about the Duffins Creek protection and the MZOs. MPP French is from our neighbor in Oshawa, has absolutely been advocating on behalf of the environmental side of this and on behalf of, in a sense, a lot of Ajax's interests on this matter. But I think she spoke half a dozen times in the legislature, was at the march. I personally appreciate it when we have representatives standing up for what the right thing, so to speak. And I don't want to get into the nitty gritty of the rehashing the argument because, you know, the decision's been made to a degree, but I firmly believe that a lot of the positive things happened as a result of her advocacy for protecting Duffins Creek and the PSW. So I just want to thank MPP French for her assist with that.
Okay, and probably MPP Mike Schreiner as well, who stepped up quite a few times, leader of the Green Party in our defense on that. So thank you to them as well. Anything further on announcements? Hearing, seeing none. Moving on to confirming bylaw, moved by Councillor Tyler Moore and seconded by Councillor Bauer. The bylaw number 19-2021, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council of the corporation of the town of Ajax at its regular meeting held on March 22nd, 2021, be read a first, second, third time and pass. Those in favor? I see all hands. That's carried. Finally, moved by Councillor Khan, second by Councillor Crawford, that the March 22nd, 2021 meeting of the Council of the Town of Ajax be adjourned. Those in favor? I see all hands. That is carried. Thank you very much, everybody.